Tomorrow is my birthday. Birthdays, at least for me, are, they're kind of tough. And I'm not saying like, we hate aging or any of that kind of stuff. But it's another one of these, it's a holiday kind of, but it's a personal holiday to us. And it feels like it's often one of these just signpost type moments in our life where we see kind of where we're at. It's a measurement. What have we accomplished in the last year? But it is relative. And for myself, I have a problem with comparison and measuring myself against other people. And I think we all do. I think it's, of course we live in a society where that's heavily encouraged, right? Especially like at work and whatever, like be the best, be all you can be, blah, 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 right? Birthdays have always been a little bit, let's put it this way. As a kid, my parents moved a lot. I went to a lot of different schools. And so I constantly found myself in a situation where I was always starting over, starting in a new school, trying to meet new people, fit into new groups. And usually only with kind of moderate success. And because my birthday is at like the end of May, it is often a weekend or a time when there's a lot of other activities going on. Prom, weddings, you name it, right? And so as a kid, every time I would get really excited, for my birthday, like, because in my family, birthday was your one day that you were special and the rest of the time you were just kind of like whatever. So I would put a lot of excitement and planning and a lot of invisible contracts. I would project a lot of stuff and uber importance onto the actual birth date itself, right? Oh, hey, welcome on in. I'm revisiting that on the eve of my birthday and remembering that one of the things when we get really upset about stuff and we're bothered by stuff in adulthood, a lot of times it kind of stems back to childhood, right? And as a kid, it happened many, many years in a row. I would invite people to my birthday party and then no one will come. And that sounds like a real boohoo thing to complain about, but it sounds dumb, but I'm going to be 53 tomorrow and having birthdays still stresses me out because I'm like, well, what if no one remembers it's my birthday? What if no one calls? What if no one texts? What if no one wants to do anything? What if no one remembers? And all this what if. And I was in a lot of that same behavior last week on Mother's Day. Like, well, is my son going to call? And when is he going to call? I'm wanting other people to reach out and acknowledge me. I have to ask, am I doing the same thing, I guess? At least for me, I had a lot of birthdays where I would work it all up in my mind, and how many times have we done that? The trip to the Bahamas or whatever you're planning, and it's going to be this and it's going to be that. It's going to be all these things. And then it's actually happening, and then you're disappointed. And then what do you do, And so trying to detach, and I'm making a leap here, but a Buddhism is try to alleviate attachments from things. Attachments from physical things, monetary things, but also people and expectations of how others should, react. And what I think what I noticed about myself, at least in the last week, was I was so ready for rejection. I was so ready for people to forget. I was so ready to be overlooked that I kind of didn't reach out to people. I was kind of making it happen. I was kind of like, well, like it was like some little test I was making up in my head. Well, if they really love me, they'll reach out. Or if they really love me, they'll remember. If they really this or they really that. And again, this is, these are games we play in our own mind that no one signed up for, Whether someone cares about you or loves you has zero to do with whether they remember a date on a calendar. That actions, words, how you show up for people, that's what really matters, right? For example, there's a real estate agent that sold me a house many, many, many years ago. I'm talking 25 years ago, this guy sold me a house. Every year on my birthday, he sends me an email birthday card, which is really, really sweet. And he remembers every year, but that doesn't necessarily mean either that he cares. Do you know what I'm saying? So we get hung up in this idea that if someone knows me or if someone really loves me, they'll know what to do, or they'll know what I like, or they'll know what I think. They might, but Probably not. This concept that we get sold all the time through movies and whatever, that somewhere there's a soulmate that's perfect for you, that's going to absolutely understand you in a way that no other human being has ever understood you your entire life. Maybe. I mean, that's possible, but I kind of feel like that's not probably the plan. Probably the plan is for us to find enough understanding in our own selves that we attract other people that want to hang out with us and find out what we're about. But it's immature of me to think that I will find my purpose, or I will find love for myself through other people loving me, through other people experiencing me, and it can't be so. We are born into this world alone. We go through it alone and die alone, right? So I have to wrestle with that. And why do I have these expectations of other people, and why do we make such a big deal about birthdays? And again, I think it's a measurement tool. We sit there and we go, well, I'm another year older, what have I done? It takes on such a negative connotation when we focus on that there was like some ideal or some place we were supposed to be right by now, or that there was a better goal or a more desirable outcome, that somehow we missed it. And now all the good stuff's over. And that's not true either. We, in a society that's kind of based on very superficial things, it's easy to get caught up in the idea that the more people acknowledge you or recognize you, the more they love you and the more important you are. And that may be true, but that doesn't mean that someone whose birthday isn't remembered or isn't recognized is any less valuable. That has no bearing on it. So why do we think that people should be able to read our minds? Why do we think that other people should just understand? And someone shared with me a long time ago, I don't remember where it came from originally, but often as humans, what we want is people to judge us on our intentions, but not as much on our actions. But we will judge others based on their actions and not their intentions. So there you go. There's a disconnect right there. I mean, have you ever been in a situation where someone has said, like, let's say it's a birthday. Let's say, since we're talking about birthdays. Oh, it's your birthday? You know what? I was gonna get you something, and I didn't. Or, I saw the cutest thing, and I thought about buying it for you. I couldn't afford it, or I didn't do it, but I thought about it. I thought about buying that for you. You may receive that information of, like, well, good story. Well, I don't want to hear about a gift you almost bought me. Where's the gift? Right? But what they're trying to convey to you is that there was the intention to buy you a gift. They were thinking about you. They were thinking that you would like this. And maybe they fiscally couldn't afford it, or the timing wasn't put for the purchase, or there is no person out there that can read my mind. I can't read other people's minds, clearly. If I could, that'd be great. But we all want to be recognized for our intention of staying sober, our intention of working on whatever goals that we have that are, that have going on in our life, maybe to make our health better, or, exercise, or improve our relationships, or our financial situation. It may not look a lot of times on the surface like anything is happening, but that doesn't mean that nothing is. And so we don't necessarily, especially when you're doing the internal work and the recovery work, I think a lot of people leave recovery before the good stuff starts happening, often because, you don't get any pats on the back. Oh, you're not getting drunk all the time anymore? Well, you weren't supposed to anyway, right? So, when you're working on stuff about how you feel about yourself, and you're unpacking years and years of baggage and going through all this, emotional undercurrents, it's easy to get frustrated with the process and feel like you're just not getting enough of the the accolades and the acknowledgments of doing the work. And that's why, like, Comedy Centered is a space where, you know, I basically just kind of BS about whatever has been going on in my week, and I love for people to chime in and chime in on the chat. Oh, hey, thanks for joining. But that's why groups are so important. Sharing in group stuff is so important. And even if it's just the chat, even if it's in person or whatever, or just people in your life, close friends, because honestly, for a long time, I thought people could kind of just like figure it out, and they should know me, and they should be able to understand what I mean by stuff. And the older I get, the more I realize, like, I have a hard time sometimes understanding other people, and I have to remember sometimes others have a hard time understanding what I want or what my motivations are. And so I'm trying to have a little bit more empathy for myself in that regard, and also for, you know, other people. And a lot of the times too, you know, we think people think about us way more than they actually do, right? You know, we're all just kind of running around in our own circle, thinking about our own stuff, you know, and what our needs are and what's being met and what's not being met. But if you feel like when you're going through your recovery journey that it's lonely and you're not getting the feedback that you want, or maybe it doesn't feel like it's moving fast enough or getting better fast enough, or it's not where you think you should be, that talk won't help. You know, it really won't. And it's kind of like you wouldn't want to try to force a flower to bloom early. You sometimes you can't force that. You know, and if you try to force things, that's essentially a shortcut. And shortcuts are just long cuts in disguise. And unfortunately, ciphering through the pain and then doing it without using the escape pod of alcohol or drugs or some other kind of a distraction, you know, it's not easy, and it's not fun, and it certainly doesn't look, you know, like you're doing anything. And I think that's where I get frustrated with myself, because it looks like I haven't done anything in the last year. But when I really look back, and I look back at like my journal from a year ago, where my old noggin was a year ago, yeah, I've done some stuff, you know, and it's not, you know, it's a day-to-day occurrence how I'm going to feel about the decisions I've made in my life and that, but deprogram myself from the idea that there is somebody on the planet that's going to be able to understand me better than me. And of course, when we say it like that, that can't be true, right? There can't be someone who understands you better than you. And so why do we think that they should? Why do we think we shouldn't have to express what we need? Why do we think we shouldn't have to share? Why do we think we shouldn't have to ask for help? And people should just know. I don't know. Conditioning, maybe. You know, a lot of things. Maybe we were, you know, not encouraged in our origin family to ask for what we needed, or if we did ask for what we needed, it wasn't really necessarily met well. The request or honored. And so it can make you want to give up on it and think that that's always the way it's going to go, that it will always be denied, that your request will always be brushed aside. And, you know, hopefully it shouldn't always be the case. I hope it's not always the case. And that's why seeking groups, using apps like Cadre, joining in communities, or at least having the courage, like you're doing now, to put yourself in the path of some different information. Listening to other people's experience is one of the things that really, really helps me snap out of it. Because I can sit and stew in my own what if brain all day. But if I stay there, it's just stinking thinking, and I will get nowhere. I have to move a muscle to change my thoughts. I have to move around. I have to get other input, because, you know, my brain's kind of a terrorist. It will just sit there and tell me terrible things about myself and other people, and it's not necessarily based on logic or evidence. It's just, you know, it's my ego being in a bad mood. And I have to recognize when that is true. And maybe maybe I'm feeling defensive or I'm upset and my ego feels plucked at for a reason. Maybe my boundaries aren't being honored or something like that. But a lot of times it's not even anything that major. It's just that reoccurring feeling, like from childhood. I felt like my origin family didn't really understand me. You carry that feeling out into the world. And so when there's a misunderstanding as an adult, sometimes, at least for me, it brings you back to that childhood place of not being understood. And, no one likes to feel that way. And, like I constantly as a kid felt like I was an alien on this planet. Like I was so weird and such a weird kid. And it was funny too, because just talking to my mom about it, we had an event. My stepfather, he has a birthday. His birthday was yesterday, and he just turned 99. I know, woo, 99. And we had a birthday party for him, but I was trying to remember one of the names of the women that Mom used to work with. And I'm like, you remember, she had the daughter, Elizabeth, who always called me weird. And then every time I went to her house, she locked me in the closet. Like, and my mom's like, I don't remember her locking in the closet. I'm like, yeah, she did, But again, just another example of people don't remember your trauma the way that you do, right? And, it's when you feel like you've been rejected, misunderstood, or not understood, or you weren't able to fully express yourself when you were younger. As we get older, we have to fight through that. And yes, maybe people are disrespecting you. Maybe they aren't listening to you. Maybe they aren't empathizing with you in the way that you would want them to. Well then, but you can't control that. So all you can really do is empathize with yourself the way that you wanted and didn't get. The term inner child is one that's been around most of my adult lifetime, but I really do picture little Tiffany, like little me, and what would I say to her? What would I say to her with her hurt feelings after her birthday party, again, her, turning 10 and no one came, right? No one shows up at the birthday party. And then your parents are like, why don't you have friends? Why didn't anybody come to your party? I'm like, I don't know. I invited them. I thought they were going to come. Right? Well, but I'm not 10 anymore. So I have to recognize that. We have to recognize that a lot of these wounds that we carry around that we are so eager to protect from ever being opened, shown, or seen again, if we don't look at them, it's just like a scab that, if you cover up a cut and you don't let the cut get air, it's not going to heal. You don't look at it and open it, you know what I mean? And so that's why that's what this kind of stuff is about, airing it out, letting the air get in, and a lot of times just venting about something that, is upsetting you and getting it out there and giving voice to it outside of your head. Just that is enough to snap you out of it, at least for me. Because when it's in my head and I don't share it with people, it's a feeling. It's a feeling in my body. But when I verbalize it, I'm sharing it and I'm discharging it, at least partially. And when, you start doing that, you start feeling better about it. You eventually start also noticing that no one shatters when you really share yourself. No one really falls apart when you disagree or say, you know what, I don't actually really feel that way. It's not quite as devastating as everybody thinks. And we spend a lot of time, at least I do, like if there's a problem, like I had to reschedule a reservation for a trip that I'm taking next week. And I barely slept. I was having all these imaginary conversations with a person I hadn't met, and I'm trying to think of all the counter arguments. Well, what if they say I can't change it? And what if there's a fee? And what will I do? And this and that and the other thing. I reached out this morning on the app. I said, here's the situation. Is there a way I can change the reservation? It's totally cool if I got to pay an upcharge. And they were like, no, it's fine. No problem. I ruminated on that all night. But that's because I was operating from, past experiences where I've had situations where, I want to change something and they won't let me. And so now I've got to, think of all my arguments and work up my, my reasoning and my rationale as to why. And I did a lot of work for nothing. So trying to not future tripping, like tripping out on the future, and staying in the present moment, staying centered, but you're showing up for yourself, and again, just putting yourself in the path of different information, opening yourself up to different mindsets, in and of itself is a radical act. Most people will go throughout their entire lifetimes never questioning anything that they've been told or what they believe about themselves. And so if you are one of the few that has the courage to dive in and into the deep end and take a look at some of the things that you've been doing in your life on automatic and autopilot, and what's working and what's not, and if you're moving towards something and trying to make change and it feels like you've ground to a halt and it's stopped and it's stagnant and it's not going anywhere, don't assume that that's wrong. Sometimes things don't go anywhere. Sometimes things just are. Okay. All right, you guys have a great week. Again, stay centered and